Get out of here, you useless woman, Mary said triumphantly to me. She must have assumed that saying this would make me cry and beg. I won't let Mary have her way any longer. I glanced at Kevin, and he nodded quietly.
Shall we move out?
Sure, I would. So we decided to leave the house. 2 weeks later, frantic calls from Mary rang loudly. When I answered the phone, I ignored Mary's fuss and said, "Who are you?" My name is Laura Smith, and I'm 45 years old this year. I've been single all my life, dedicating myself to my work. That's because I found my job very fulfilling. Currently, I work as a shoe salesperson in a department store. In a department store, customers always expect high-quality service, so even a slight lapse can lead to complaints. Therefore, I can never let my guard down. When I was younger, this led to a major complaint. At that time, I was exhausted by the high quotas and the busy schedule. One day, I handed a customer a pair of shoes they purchased without noticing that the paper bag was slightly dirty. Naturally, the customer was furious. My supervisor stepped in and managed to calm the customer down. Since then, I've always approached my work with a sense of urgency. Thanks to that, I eventually started meeting my quotas. Continuing to work here until I retire doesn't seem so bad. Just as I was thinking that, I met Kevin. Kevin is a regular customer at our shoe store. He's the same age as me and works for a mid-sized company. He visits us every 3 months because his leather shoes wear out from all the sales work he does. Not only that, but he also comes in to buy running shoes, as jogging is his hobby. The chance encounter that brought Kevin and me closer together happened by accident. One day, I had the day off and was at a cafe near the department store. Because I wanted to relax and read my favorite book. Although I could read at home, living with my parents meant my overly worried mom would constantly interrupt me. She's always fussing over the fact that I'm in my 40s and still single. While I was sipping coffee and thinking about my mom, someone called out to me.
Hey, aren't you the salesperson from the shoe store?
Kevin. He happened to have the day off too and had come to the same cafe. He saw me and couldn't resist saying hello. We ended up chatting about various topics. We talked about ourselves, the nearby cafes we often visit, and much more for over 2 hours without running out of things to say. Kevin was easy to talk to, so I didn't feel the need to hold back despite him being a regular customer. This encounter led to us starting to meet up occasionally. We simply enjoyed each other's company. Eventually, we found out that neither of us had a partner, and we decided to start dating. Given our age, we're both considering marriage as a possibility. A year after we started dating, we got married. We didn't have a ceremony, we just did the paperwork. Following the tradition at the department store where I worked, I resigned when I married Kevin. Although the tradition required full-time employees to resign, they could return as part-timers. However, I decided to become a full-time housewife because I wanted to support Kevin, my husband, from behind the scenes. We had already introduced each other to our parents, and I believed a happy married life awaited us. But reality was not so sweet. Just as we were about to start looking for a house to live in together, I received a phone call with a proposal from Kevin's mom, Mary.
How about living with us until you find a place? I think it would be good for you to learn our family recipes, Laura.
Mary sounded cheerful on the phone. As I hesitated for a moment, Mary added with a laugh.
And besides, Kevin loves my cooking, so you'd better learn it well, or he might lose interest.
When we introduced ourselves to our parents, Mary and her husband Bob seemed like good people, and I didn't have any bad impressions of them, but I wasn't sure about living together. I'll discuss it with Kevin. In the end, I couldn't accept Mary's sudden proposal that day. When I consulted Kevin, he surprisingly showed concern for me.
It's my parents' house, so I'm fine with it, but it might be stressful for you, even if it's temporary.
I was happy with Kevin's kindness, especially since many men would insist on living with their parents after marriage. I thought about Kevin's words for a while. I just married Kevin, and I want to build a good relationship with Mary and Bob. And if I think of it as a temporary stay until we find our new home, I might be able to live with them more comfortably. Also, Mary's suggestion to learn the Smith family recipes was something I could easily accept. That's because my mom, a very principled woman, taught me to value my in-laws.
When you get married, you must cherish your husband and his parents. Marriage is a bond between two families.
My mom always said this as if it were her favorite phrase. I deeply respect my mom's teachings. Since I married Kevin, I want to cook dishes with flavors he's familiar with. With that thought in mind, I conveyed my decision to Kevin later. I'll live with your parents. So Kevin and I began living with his parents. I believed my decision was the right one, but I didn't realize that this was the beginning of many hardships. It's been a week since I moved in with Kevin's family, but I'm already mentally exhausted. That's because I faced Mary's harsh treatment from the very first day. Thank you for having me. When I greeted them at the entrance, Mary's gaze was quite cold. Kevin was at work that day and wouldn't be back until the evening. As I tilted my head in confusion, Mary let out a big sigh and said,
How long are you going to stand at the door? If you're the wife, you should be serving us coffee and doing chores. Didn't your mom teach you that?
I'm sorry. I hadn't expected to be asked to do housework on the first day, so I was taken aback. But maybe this was the rule in Kevin's family.
She doesn't need to do that much on her first day, does she?
Bob tried to stop Mary, but she wouldn't listen.
What if Laura gets too comfortable? The first impression is crucial.
Mary quietly scolded Bob. I made coffee in an unfamiliar kitchen and hurriedly started cleaning. Satisfied that I followed her orders, Mary laughed and said,
Well, I guess that's passable. Since you're too old to give us grandchildren, at least be useful in other ways.
After that, Mary walked away with a laugh, and though Bob looked at me with concern, he eventually left as well. I secretly clenched my teeth in frustration. It's true that I'm in my 40s, and I hadn't considered having children. I knew it would be physically challenging at my age. I had explained this to Mary and Bob when we got married, and I thought they had accepted it. But Mary probably didn't feel the same way. Realizing that I hadn't been accepted as a member of the Smith family left me stunned and unable to move for a while. Looking back, maybe I should have reconsidered living with them at that point. Mary's attitude towards me only worsened after that.
Laura, come here.
Mary would find any excuse to call me out loudly. What happened? As soon as I came before Mary, she shouted,
Look at the corner of this room. There's a hair here. You really don't care about keeping the house clean, do you? You're failing as a daughter-in-law.
She picked up the hair and waved it in front of me. Oh, I'm sorry, Mary. I was puzzled by the hair Mary was holding up, because that hair hadn't been there just 5 minutes ago. She must have placed it there to bother me, I thought, realizing what was happening.
Make sure you clean every corner. Otherwise, you won't get dinner. And don't even think about sneaking any food.
With that, Mary returned to her room. Bob watched the scene quietly, looking like he was deep in thought. Yes. As I watched Mary's back, I could only regret my decision to live with them. It was around the 6-month mark. By this time, Mary had started pushing all the housework onto me. Laundry, cleaning, and cooking had become my responsibilities. However, it was better for me to do the cooking. That's because Mary's cooking was terrible. She liked everything to taste overwhelmingly salty. On the first day we lived together, Mary had me stand next to her in the kitchen to show me how she seasoned food.
This is our family's flavor. Not that you could ever replicate it, Laura.
Laughing, Mary added a large handful of salt. The dish quickly became too salty. I understand using salt as a secret ingredient, but this was clearly too much. I was shocked and voiced my concern to Mary. Mary, isn't that too much? It won't be a subtle flavor. It will only taste like salt. Mary angrily responded with a frown.
Salt is the most versatile seasoning. Laura, you're so ignorant. Didn't your mom teach you anything?
She made it sound like I was the one in the wrong. That day, we ended up eating the dish that tasted only of salt. Mary's attitude continued to be terrible and outrageous. From the next day, she forced me to cook dinner, only to criticize it afterward.
This has no flavor at all. You're utterly useless and the worst daughter-in-law.
She would then angrily add more salt. I'm sorry. I could only apologize to Mary. The only relief I had was that Bob would quietly eat without complaint. Bob would also admonish Mary.
You should be grateful that Laura made this for us and show some appreciation, don't you think?
Kevin also would get angry at Mary.
This is what normal food tastes like. Laura's cooking is delicious.
Kevin would also comfort me when Mary wasn't around.
I'm really sorry about my mom. Let's find a new house soon and get out of the house.
It's okay. Thank you. I was almost moved to tears by Kevin's kindness. One day, I woke up with a fever of 104 degrees Fahrenheit. It must have been from being forced by Mary to pull weeds outside late at night.
Don't you dare tell Kevin.
Mary's smile at that moment was truly malicious. Kevin was very worried about me.
Laura, are you okay? I'll come back as soon as I can, so get some rest.
With that, Kevin left for work. However, Mary was the same as always. As soon as Kevin left the house, she burst into my room and started giving orders.
Laura, you're in charge of dinner tonight. and you still need to do all the other housework.
There was no way I could cook with such a high fever, so I decided to defy Mary's orders. I'm sorry, Mary. I have a fever and don't think I can manage the housework today. But my plea fell on deaf ears.
You have a fever because you don't take care of yourself. You're really so naive. Just go shopping for dinner and cook it.
With that, Mary slammed the door and left. I was stunned by her attitude. I guess I have no choice but to try. I reluctantly dragged my heavy body to the grocery store. However, in my feverish and dizzy state, I couldn't shop properly. I ended up buying some fish and decided that grilled fish would be the main dish for dinner. I thought that grilling fish would require less preparation. At dinner, I somehow managed to grill the fish and serve it. Kevin came home just in time and was shocked to see me.
You should be resting today. Are you okay to be up?
Kevin was very concerned, but I didn't have the strength to respond. At that moment, Mary and Bob came to the dining table.
Oh my, what is this? Just grilling fish? That's so lazy. And the table looks kind of dirty too.
As soon as Mary looked at the dining table, she started finding faults. Today, I didn't have the energy to clean every corner as thoroughly as I usually do. Cooking while having a fever was all I could manage. I sincerely apologized to Mary. I'm sorry, Mary. I still have a fever, and I can't move properly. Mary then smirked at me.
Get out of here, you useless woman.
Mary said triumphantly to me. She must have assumed that saying this would make me cry and beg. Until now, I had always tried to be a good daughter-in-law, apologizing and keeping quiet. Even when I wanted to argue back, I never did so strongly and always held it in. But I had reached my limit. I won't let Mary have her way any longer. I glanced at Kevin, and he nodded quietly.
Shall we move out?
Sure, I would. In the end, Mary probably just wanted someone she could boss around and use as a punching bag. So we decided to leave the house. The next morning, my fever had finally gone down, and I left the house with Kevin. However, at that moment, Mary tried to stop us.
Why is Kevin leaving too? It should be enough for this useless wife to leave.
Mary said, clinging to Kevin. It seemed that, in Mary's mind, I was the only problem. But Kevin, already fed up with Mary, easily rejected her plea.
I love Laura. Mom, please live happily with Dad.
The moment Kevin said this, Mary glared at me with a terrifying expression.
You've turned Kevin against me. I'll never forgive you.
She hurled insults at me. But from my perspective, it was Mary who had tried to drive me out. And she had treated me terribly when I was at my weakest with a high fever. So I couldn't understand why she was making me out to be the villain. Her insults didn't affect me at all. Besides, Mary would soon face her own consequences. So I wasn't afraid of her resentment at all. 2 weeks later, I was living in an apartment. Kevin was with me, and we were enjoying our life together. In the midst of all this, my phone rang. It was Mary. At first, I ignored the call from her. But even as I ignored it, frantic calls from Mary kept ringing loudly. She keeps calling over and over again, just as I expected. I let out a big sigh. It was clear that things were starting to unravel around her. I was a little amused to see Mary doing exactly what I expected. When I answered the phone, I ignored Mary's fuss and said, "Who are you?"
What do you mean, who are you? How dare you speak to me like that? You're so insolent for a daughter-in-law.
Mary screamed hysterically. Well, she was still full of energy, not missing a chance to throw insults at me.
I'm going to talk to your mom. I demand an apology for raising such a terrible daughter-in-law.
Besides Kevin, there was another person in the room with me. I put the phone on speaker so that this person could hear my conversation with Mary. However, Mary didn't notice this and continued to loudly berate me.
Because of you, my family is in shambles. Kevin left with you, and now Bob is missing too. I even found divorce papers on the table.
Mary was in a panic, and her attacks on me were relentless.
Anyway, if you did something, that's a crime. I'm calling the police right now. You could have avoided being a criminal if you had behaved.
As soon as Mary mentioned the police, the person who was with us started to move. Then he spoke towards my phone.
I'm here of my own free will.
Mary faltered at the sound of his voice.
What? Bob, why are you there? That Laura must have done something to you.
I could hear her frustration and anger in Mary's voice, even over the phone. I realized it would be better to talk to her directly. As things stood, Mary saw me as a criminal who had kidnapped Bob. There was even a chance she might report me to the police in her rage. I sighed deeply and said, "This isn't getting us anywhere. Let's meet and discuss this in person. I'll tell you the location, so please come here." Kevin and Bob both nodded in agreement.
Fine, you'd better be ready.
And so, we prepared to confront Mary face to face. 15 minutes later, the doorbell rang loudly several times. "I'm coming." When I opened the door, there stood Mary with a furious expression.
How dare you, as a daughter-in-law? How did you manage to turn Kevin and Bob against me? You are disgusting.
Mary glared at me fiercely. When I remained silent, Mary continued her tirade.
And what is this? This shabby apartment? The house we lived in before was much better.
Mary looked around the room, letting out a hysterical scream. She was truly a nuisance to the neighbors. Now we live in an old 3-bedroom apartment. While it looked shabby from the outside, it had been renovated and was quite clean inside. It was indeed smaller than Mary's house. Even though it has been renovated, there are still parts that feel old. But Mary had no right to criticize it this much. We had our reasons for living in this apartment, but I wasn't ready to share them with Mary. So I just glared at her in silence. As I faced off with Mary, Kevin and Bob came to the doorway. Both of them glared at Mary, but she remained unfazed.
All right, both of you, I'm here to take you home. This shabby apartment is good enough for this miserable woman alone.
Mary shouted loudly. She was brimming with confidence, as if it were only natural that Kevin and Bob would come back with her. But reality was not so kind.
This is a nice apartment, Mom, despite what you say. If you're unhappy, you can live in that big house by yourself.
Kevin told Mary firmly.
But it's lonely in that big house alone. So come back. This woman can surely manage on her own.
Mary pleaded with Kevin. Her confidence seemed to waver now that Kevin had spoken up. However, Kevin didn't budge. Instead, he refuted her words.
Mom, aren't you the one who can handle being alone? Or are you upset because you can't bully Laura anymore?
Mary's face turned red, clearly hit by the truth. Her thoughts were completely corrupted. She wanted to see me left behind, looking upset. I've done nothing to deserve Mary's hatred, but being hated this much almost makes me feel defiant. As I was thinking this, Bob stepped forward.
I'm fed up with you too. I'm divorcing you, so live your life as you please.
Bob, siding with Kevin, declared to Mary.
Bob.
Bob suddenly came over to our house yesterday.
I've decided to leave Mary.
Bob's face looked relieved as he said this. Kevin had already told Bob where we were living when we moved out. We had also suggested that he could live with us. So Bob decided to join us. Bob had always been suspicious of Mary's attitude towards me. He had been troubled by Mary even since they got married. Mary wasn't particularly tidy. She did minimal cleaning and laundry, rarely mopped, and only vacuumed occasionally. As for cooking, she believed adding salt to everything was sufficient. Yet, she demanded perfection from me. Bob saw a huge contradiction in this. He had stayed with her out of a sense of duty, but this situation made him lose his patience with Mary. Bob had always supported me behind the scenes, and I was deeply grateful to him. Bob then glared at Mary and said,
I tried to stop your behavior many times, and I saw you intentionally throwing trash on the floor when Laura wasn't around.
He looked at Mary with disdain.
What's this about, Mom?
Kevin, unaware of these facts, started questioning Mary. I had refrained from reporting Mary's actions to Kevin to avoid worsening their relationship. So Kevin was shocked by Mary's behavior. And Bob was a reasonable person. That's why he found Mary's behavior even more unacceptable. Mary panicked after Bob's revelation.
I just wanted her to be a good wife for Kevin. I was only trying to discipline her, so I'm not at fault.
Mary began to claim that she did everything for my benefit. It's truly exhausting to see how she refuses to reflect on her actions. I calmly told Mary what I had been thinking all along. Mary, what you're doing is just bullying. And as for the Smith family's taste being just adding lots of salt, too much salt is bad for your health. Mary's cooking clearly had too much salt. But even that didn't resonate with her.
I thought food tasted better with more flavor, and I think it's delicious.
Mary loudly counted. I realized that Mary and I would never see eye to eye. I let out a deep sigh. Then please continue with your salty lifestyle, Mary. Bob has reached his limit, so you should consider letting him go. Bob had endured Mary's cooking for a long time. But at his age, being in his 70s, the salty diet was too much for him. He was actually very happy to eat normally seasoned food after moving in with us.
I was finally able to eat proper meals. But then, because of Mary, you had to leave, and I was devastated.
Apparently, our decision to move out was the catalyst for his decision to get his divorce. However, Mary showed no empathy for Bob's feelings. What? What do you mean? You always ate my cooking and said it was delicious. Mary crossed her arms and huffed. I was stunned by Mary's words. There's no way that overly salty food could be delicious. What is wrong with her taste buds? Then Bob spoke up, expressing my thoughts.
No, I always thought your cooking was too salty. Laura's cooking is much better than yours.
Bob. I was moved by Bob's words. When I was living with them, Mary constantly criticized my cooking.
It's awful. Did your mom teach you nothing? What a pathetic mom she must be.
Mary frequently insulted my mom, and she would always add more salt to my dishes. Every properly seasoned recipe would turn into something overly salty. Even the cherished recipes my mom taught me were ruined by Mary's hand with the salt. I felt like Mary had tainted all my memories of my mom. I was always on the verge of tears from frustration. Bob's words now felt like a vindication of all those moments of despair.
Bob, you don't need to defend that woman. Let's go back home together.
Mary began to walk towards Bob, but Bob quickly stepped away from her.
Bob, what's wrong?
Mary looked puzzled. She probably still couldn't understand why Bob was avoiding her. Bob spoke calmly to Mary.
I'm divorcing you. If you don't agree, I'll go through a lawyer.
It was Bob's final warning to Mary. Mary finally broke down and started to cry.
No way. That house is too big for me to live in alone, and we don't have much savings left.
As Mary cried, Kevin delivered the final blow.
Mom, don't you know? That house is a rental, and Dad already terminated the lease. You have to move out by next month.
What? What do you mean?
Mary was left in stunned silence. At that moment, Bob seemed to remember something and said,
Oh, I've been paying the rent from my account, and I might not have mentioned it. And if you continue to live there, the rent will be about $2,000 a month.
$2,000?
Mary was stunned to hear that. Their home had been rented by Bob's parents' generation, but it was actually a rental property. Due to the old contract, they had been renting the spacious house at a relatively low monthly price of $2,000. As a result, they had never considered moving to a purchased property. However, unlike Bob, who had worked as a salaryman for a long time, Mary had always been a housewife and had very little savings, so she couldn't afford a rent of $2,000.
This can't be. It's not true.
Tears streamed down Mary's face as she glanced at me.
I'll live with you from now on. You're my daughter-in-law, so you should obey me.
Despite her tears, Mary clearly had no intention of changing her attitude towards me. She wasn't sorry for her past actions at all. So, I smiled and said, Absolutely not. You called me useless at housework, right? Someone like me can't take care of you. My words caused Mary to slump her shoulders in defeat. After that, Mary and Bob's divorce was finalized. Mary resisted until the end, crying and screaming.
What will happen to me if I divorce Bob? I can't live on my savings alone.
However, Bob showed no mercy.
You can start working now, can't you? Besides, I have no love left for you. I want to restart my life without you.
Bob.
Mary eventually signed the divorce papers, crying all the while. But I believe she didn't give up on Bob. She just didn't want to go through a costly court battle. If it went to court, the expenses would be high, and Mary, with her limited savings, wouldn't be able to afford a lawyer. After the divorce was finalized, Mary began showing up repeatedly in front of our apartment. It's unclear whether she was more attached to the money or to Bob, but she appeared at all hours. I heard from the landlord that Mary was unable to change the name on the rental contract due to her inability to pay, and as a result, the lease was terminated, and she was evicted from the house. After that, Mary seemed to be quite desperate, and her eyes took on a frightening look. Her clothes were dirty in places, indicating she wasn't living a proper life. Eventually, Mary was taken away by the police. That's because one day she suddenly attacked me. Since Mary kept showing up in front of our apartment, we had already consulted the police. However, since there hadn't been any decisive incidents, the police could only increase patrols. Taking advantage of this, Mary acted one day. As I was returning to the apartment from shopping, she suddenly appeared in front of me. "Mary, what's going on?" Surprised by her sudden approach, I called out to her. Then, Mary grabbed my arm tightly. "That hurts. Mary!" I shouted loudly. She cried aloud with tears streaming down her face.
It's all your fault. You ruined my life. Give me back Bob and Kevin.
Mary collapsed to the ground in tears. At that moment, a patrolling police officer arrived and took Mary away. The last time I saw Mary, her figure seemed small and diminished. She blamed everything on me and never reflected on her actions. In the end, she probably thought she wasn't at fault. Mary losing everything was her own doing. I'll probably never see her again. When Mary gets out of the police station, she will be even more devastated. I can confidently say that Mary will never be happy again. That's because soon after, Kevin, Bob, and I had a discussion and decided to move. Our new home is a newly built house. Of course, we purchased it. We could have moved earlier, but it was risky if Mary found out about the new place. So we carefully timed our move. After Mary was taken away by the police, we immediately hired a moving company that could handle emergency moves and quickly transported our belongings to the new house. When Mary gets out of the police station and sees our empty apartment, she will be devastated. But that's the path she chose. I don't care about her anymore. Kevin, Bob, and I will live together in the new house. Unlike Mary, Bob often helps with chores.
Nowadays, men who can't do housework are disliked, you know?
Bob said with a hearty laugh.
I'll do my best too. So Laura, feel free to do what you love.
Kevin also helped me in many ways. Thank you. I am very grateful to both of them. Next month, I will return to work. I will be working as a shoe sales clerk at the department store. Even after I quit, they occasionally reached out to me. It's nice to feel needed even after leaving. Though it's just part-time, I hope to eventually return as a full-time employee. Our new house comes with a mortgage, and I want to pay it off quickly for our future. Most importantly, I love working. I'll keep doing my best. Together with the people I love, I keep moving forward and doing my best every day.